Hello and welcome everybody to New Earth Consciousness. Tanya here with Danikah Rose, who is a psychic business strategist, and her website is danikahRoseCreative.com. Danikah, thank you for being here. I've been really looking forward to this conversation. We're going to get into some good stuff, I think.
I'm truly excited. I think one of my favorite things about business is always either interviewing someone else or being interviewed. So podcasting
Yeah,
is definitely like a big piece of my heart.
yeah. So one thing I have to bow down to you for is that you are a mother of five. Let's just say like that's pretty badass. And you're a business owner. And so let's start with the story that you shared with me is that you've always been a psychic. You've always had this deep intuitive connection, able to sense things. And you shared this story of being a young woman. You were a teenager, if I remember correctly, and you were basically in charge as I don't remember if you were a manager or what, but you discovered that someone was really not in integrity
Mm.
in that business that you were involved with. So, and that was kind of this seemed to me like it was kind of an aha moment for you. So I'm curious, there's so many layers to that. First of all, being a young woman and standing up to having to stand up to something, it takes a lot of guts, especially when it's like you were following this hunch. So yeah, share with us the story.
I find that I've lived a life of courage, but it's only in hindsight that I discover that and through other people reflecting it back to me. And they say, "My God, you're so brave. You've done so many things." And I'm like, la di da. And I've definitely been in this massive portal of remembrance my entire life where a constant mantra for me is I am a sponge. My brain is a sponge. Like I know that I've always been here to absorb the environment and absorb what things are going on around me without taking it on as a responsibility. But there have been times like the one that you've mentioned where I thought, no, this is a choice point. This is a chance for me to do right by someone else that I've grown to care about over a very short relationship. So I had a manager or an owner rather, CEO, multimillionaire, very trusting, hired me as a normal waitress, just there, bit of a lackey, doing some dishes,
Mhm.
serving the tables. And then I had this weird feeling about the current manager, and I thought, surely not. They've been friends for 35 years. How could it be that my gut is telling me that he is stealing money? It doesn't make sense. Why would I just randomly come up with that crazy idea?
Because it's not
Could it
something you
be
saw physically, right? Like you didn't see him like taking money out of the cash register or whatever, or him
not until
scribbling
later
books.
on?
Yeah.
Yeah, because like I shared with you, I actually did this mini kind of like investigation, and I didn't view it at the time as something courageous. I didn't see it as like playing against the systematic programming of women and
Mhm.
the men are in this like higher position. And but
Mhm.
as it played out and I grew and I had these realizations, I was like, wow, that was actually kind of like a big thing to do for an 18-year-old who's just a waitress to go up to her multi-million dollar assets are stacked. He had all these other businesses going on, like everything was going on.
Yeah.
And then and I accused his best friend of 35 years of being a thief. But I didn't do it out of nothing. I spent the next 12 weeks basically putting a case together. I had some administrative access on the back end because I was helping him with some other tasks. And I'd asked permission because
Mhm.
consent is really important to me. And I
Mhm.
said, "Oh, do you mind if I just have a look at what's been happening? Because it looks like you could be making more money on the night, but something's happening." And that was kind of my in. I was like, something's happening here. Can I have a look? And he's like, yeah, of course. Like, you know about this stuff. So, like, let me have it. And yeah, I went and I did all the call logs and the tracking and the cameras and basically was stealing cash directly from the till and deleting all of the items down to zero, and then taking the entire takings from entire tables. And that was a really big deal when you've got like a $400 or $500 table of one evening, and then you account that for 5 to 6 nights or days of the week, and then you look at that revenue over the lifetime of the business that he's been in full responsibility for all of those earnings for the owner. That was a big responsibility of mine that I felt that I was called to share. And that changed the entire trajectory of my life, which is why it probably stuck out to you and you went, oh my God.
Yeah.
Because then the whole venue became my responsibility. We scaled up. We sold that business for a good, decent profit, and then moved into a $3.5 million business, which I was responsible for as well, and then elevated that to 25 staff. And I was 19 years old.
Oh
So
my
this
God.
is all within a 12-month period that we'd quantum leaped my life path, and his, and all of his assets and businesses had, like, I don't even know how much. I couldn't have the numbers off the top of my head right now, but it was a lot. It was a big
Yeah.
deal.
Amazing. And then, and so fast forward to now, you, I mean, you're still using your psychic gifts, but you help the entrepreneur, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and in between that phase where I was a little unconscious about it, it was just intuition. We
Yeah.
have less inhibitions when we're younger, and I went on to have my 5 children over the next sort of 12, 13 year period,
Yeah.
and because that's going back quite a while now, and I helped multiple businesses do this unintentionally. They'd hire me as a manager. One of them was a fitness franchise that's an international company. And then I ended up being second in charge with 100 people under me. And I was teaching them all about marketing and authenticity. And this is how I get 40 women to my classes every week. And this is how I 10x'd my own da da da. And I was like, oh, okay. That's actually a thing that I've always been doing since I was a kid, but I hadn't put two and two together because I was distracted by motherhood and devoted to motherhood and
Mhm.
to removing myself from a dangerous domestic violent relationship and going through all of that trauma and recalibration. And then all the while, I was an entrepreneur since my firstborn was 4 months old. So
Mhm.
I've always been self employed.
Yeah.
And then I've been employed by other people to step in for a 6 month contract, totally revolutionize their business, and then step out again. And I didn't really pay that much attention to it until the last 3 years, where I was like, no, this is actually me. This is me reading the blueprint of that business and the highest potential, how to actually do that in the 3D tangible steps to get there reality.
Interesting. So what you just said, you had a realization that it was you. I mean, so before that realization, did you just think it was what? Luck, or that it was just like, oh, it worked out, wasn't expecting it? I mean, what was your thinking before then? Until it
I
became
think the
obvious, like,
thread,
oh yeah, this is my gift, right? And claiming it for yourself.
it was this naivety. And the more I've also delved into my human design, I have a gift line that's all around innocence. And for me,
Innocent.
it was just pure celebration.
Yeah.
I was just like, wow, look at this. Wow, I love that. Oh my God, the next best thing is going to happen. And then I got hard stuck into all these like Abraham Hicks and like these, the law of assumption, and just assuming that the best outcome was going to happen, and the self concept and working on my identity. And then I would see things change every 6 months for me. And it still happens to this day. I'm never the same person 12 months later. There's so many things that stay consistent, like parenting, and my now relationship with my husband's been going for like 8 years now. And it's just, there's constant things, but there's so much evolution in between all of those pieces.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds amazing because I feel like there's so many struggles that an entrepreneur goes through, right? Like initially, maybe it's that naive phase. You think, I know what my gift is. I'm going to go and create a business around it. and you go into the whatever, the online space or wherever, maybe it's in person, and you think that there's that naivete of just like, well, if I just shine my genius, people will just come. And then you realize like, oh, well, that's what everybody else is doing. So why would someone, right, come to me? Oh, and then it becomes this rabbit hole. It's been my experience. This rabbit hole of, okay, I guess I need that and I need that and I need that, and then you're like, you're literally just kind of going down this winding road looking for answers, hoping that somehow, doing the right thing, something's going to click. And then I think and of course, then it gets, each person is different. But I think for myself, for example, that, there's so many people out there that are neurodivergent, right? And so they may end up getting overwhelmed and then they lose themselves and they don't know, well, who am I supposed to listen to? And then most recently, I think I saw your post about, um, we've been putting coaches, certain coaches that have achieved a certain amount of success on pedestals, right? And think you said that that era is over, right? And you said, mark my words. I'm like, oh my gosh, I totally feel that because it's almost like the Wizard of Oz, the big green guy and behind the Emerald Palace or whatever, and the curtain gets lifted and you realize like, oh, he's just a dude, like there's nothing particularly magical about this person. Um, so I know I kind of just blurted out a lot right there, but share with us like what is it that you see when entrepreneurs struggle and what's happening out there. You talked about also like NLP being one of these ways that some of these big name coaches, and we're not here to shame anyone, but that there are marketing and like language matters, NLP, people get hypnotized and they don't even know it. And suddenly they realize they're getting sucked into something and they're buying things that it's almost like it overrides the intuition, maybe. I don't know. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on all of that.
I just love it so much because my brain is connecting all of the big connectors and all the threads, and this is also why I love being interviewed because it gives me so much insight into the collective energies and hearing from people's personal experiences. It's very important that we understand that things are being perceived from an individual perspective.
Hmm.
It's a perception. It doesn't create the reality based on what other people know to be true for them. It's going to be created from the inner knowing that we have. And as you're explaining, sometimes we can get blindsided by that, or we don't realize that there's also an undertone of these spell work, the black magic, these eight-figure businesses that literally have witches that are paid money, physical money exchange, and contracted to put spells on people that are even showing up for free masterclasses. That there are chips and technology that is energetically being embedded into people's soul contract to keep them in the loop of being retained by that particular facilitator. And this is a very real and not a fear plug. It's not a fear plug. It's an awareness plug. When we have awareness of it and we then tap into tools like body scanning and, like you said, go back to your intuition. If you've attended an event or you've paid somebody for something or you've even just signed the contract and you notice that the energy shifts in a not so good way,
Hmm.
you really need to turn up your discernment and figure out if that is resistance because there's growth that's about to happen. Are you on the edge? Is this a precipice? Is something about to evolve and explode here? Or is it actually contraction that's not fear based and it's something else that's plugging into or siphoning your energy? So I just wanted to kind of start with that.
Yeah.
And the next thing to say that I feel is very important to share is that my work for like 80% of my career was face to face. It was on the ground. It was in people's door knocks. It was sending out emails. It was, and through connections, not cold emails. I'll make that clear. I was not that person. I was the one that everyone said, oh, you need Danikah, go here, referrals. Okay. And I'm a four line. It's natural for me to network. This is not a strategy everybody else can implement all of the time. And
Mhm.
life happens and many other things to say there. However, the reason I'm bringing this up is because 3 years ago I went online and that opened up an entire different energy for me. My blueprint expanded significantly. International clients are still the predominant basis of my revenue generation. And tapping into all of the grid work that I was already doing and the astral travel, these lucid dreams, and projecting myself into other areas within the earth grids to do spiritual work was something I'd already been doing before I even came online as a psychic business strategist. But the calling really came from the that awakening point that said these these are the things that people need to know about how business is going to play out in the next 5 years. And I was like, oh. And because then I realized how I was reading into the energetic blueprints of individual businesses, and that goes into all the other layers, but then also the collective business blueprint for Earth in general, like, and international experience going into all of the other grids and then dismantling it and viewing it from this bird's eye view. And I was like, wow, things are significantly shifting. And I will talk about that. Perhaps you have some questions, but I do want to address two other things that were part of what we said before, which was about our belief systems. It's really important in my experience to instill a belief system that supports reciprocity and really leaning into activating that belief that no matter where we share energy, it will be reciprocated and times by 1,000.
Mm.
And it's
Mhm.
kind of a dangerous, risky statement in and of itself. And the same way with affirmations. When we affirm very loosely and very generalist, we can expect something to mirror back without precision. That can happen.
Mhm.
So it's very important that if you do affirm these beliefs about being reciprocated for your output, that you are giving in service to soul mission to the collective, not egoic price setting, not looking at other trends and what is everyone else doing in their marketing and I need to follow suit, not they scaled with a mastermind, so I have to do that too because I cannot scale one to one, even though I'm built for precision. And there will be people listening that are like, oh my God, she's calling me out. Then there's other people that are trying to batch create content when they're supposed to just post one thing a day and just be in the present moment and intuitively share whatever hits them. So every single business needs every single person to have a totally custom
Yeah.
marketing and business strategy that's built on them. And I'm not saying it even from a sales perspective. I don't really mind who you hire. You can go to your Akashic records, you can go to your astrology chart, you can go to your human design and find the specialist family constellations like Tania here. We are specialists in our tool so that we can gift you an a tangible and operative tool that you can use to implement however you want to, whether it's for your family, your relationships, your money blueprints, your mindset, your business. Like either way, I'm just saying, please evolve and take this listening to this podcast right now as an opportunity to understand that if you are listening to this opportunity inside of this podcast, you're already arrived. There isn't a destination to go to that's outside of yourself, that is some new paradigm business blueprint that is coded and you have to pay for access to get to the result, to get it's not separate from you, just like your higher self isn't. It's not something that we have to tap into in separation. We tap into it through remembrance and understanding that it's a part of the unity. It's a part of the consciousness that everyone has access to, the same way we all have access to the abundance that's available while yes, we do have divine order and we go through initiations to get to these points in choices and
True.
mm,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's so much that you said there, and I think that I think my own personal frustration that I've experienced as a newbie in entrepreneurship, right, is that um, what I find really interesting about you and your work is that you are really, I think healers, people who are psychic, intuitive, all of that tend to think like, I don't know anything about business, so I need to go find somebody to teach me about business. And then you find yourself like, oh, I can't afford the high one-to-one coaching mentorship that's tens of thousands of dollars. So I'll do that group business coaching program. And then you go, and this is just my experience. I go in, I'm learning all the things. They say do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, I'll do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then it doesn't work. And I think, okay. And then I try it again and it doesn't work. And it's like, it took, and for me, I think my human design is I learn through mistakes. So, so
joy.
you know, so it's like, oh, right, okay. Yeah, group programs don't work for me. I really need the one-to-one, but also not just a one-to-one of somebody like I figured out, so let me show you how to do it. You're going to follow my blueprint. I've really finally realized like it doesn't work that way. And even just connecting with you now, it's like, of course it doesn't. Each person's energy is so different, and it has to be when you're in business for yourself, it has to be nourishing for you. Because if you're told, go do this, like you were saying, oh, if this coach, maybe they're not necessarily they're successful because they figured out their own blueprint, great. But then to say, okay, just take my blueprint and use it for yourself, you're wondering, why am I burned out? Well, it's because it's not that doesn't match your energy. And so I love that you're talking about, yeah, just blueprints and really just you're talking about quantum level stuff. And so your gift is that you're able to see into someone's blueprint. You can see into um, just the multidimensional reality of their business, of their energy, of how they connect with people, all of that stuff. I feel like the so when you say, um, okay, well, when you say, okay, you just need to tap into it for yourself, I feel like, yeah, that's true. And for most people, and I know I speak for myself, it's hard to see ourselves, right? It's hard to know, okay, what is my gift? How am I seen? How's my energy perceived? And sometimes it takes that other person to be able to tune into what it is that you have going on and be able to say, look, this is this is how you're going to shine, right?
Oh my goodness. I could say so many things, and my higher voice is saying, just refine, refine, stay focused,
Yeah.
because my brain wants to do all these crazy things right now. And
Right.
I want to start with the last thing that you said, which is how am I being perceived? And I don't tend to train, teach, believe, coach, or even ponder the question, how am I being perceived? Because I can also speak from a place of ethics, however, because I know that I'm not in the paradigm of bullying the client or manipulating the client. So perhaps there's some insights that I share that can be quite blunt, but I'm not being mean. And maybe if I was being mean, then maybe I do need to consider how am I being perceived. So perhaps it's me just tapping into that and going, oh, that's maybe not something I personally need to think about. Maybe there are people out there that do need to ask themselves that question. But I think it's more about how do we feel when we're creating
Mhm,
and when we are tapping into creation energy and our life force energy and distributing that in certain channels,
mhm,
meaning our omnipresent marketing. A channel can look like YouTube, it can look like a podcast, it might be email marketing. However, you're channeling, because we're always channeling.
mhm,
It's not a channel as in someone has to tune in to be channeling. Whenever we're doing self inquiry and whenever we're going beyond the human thinking, and it doesn't necessarily mean we need to get into some kind of like meditative state or theta or hypnotist
mhm,
or even consulting with someone else, but like a really easy way of doing it is to just to access the part of your body and listen to how it's responding when you go over certain items within your business. So it could be my pricing. Do I need to do a body pendulum?
mhm,
How do my feet feel? Am I grounded? You might be someone that plays in the paradigm of chakras and you can feel these energy centers activating or restricting. Is it fear? Again, come back to the discernment. Is this fear or is it a contraction because I feel like I do want to expand and express? But it's really about our business being the portal of self expression as opposed to how is it being perceived by the outside world. Because the further we get away from our own compass of sharing through authenticity, the
mhm,
further away we will be from the wealth and the freedom and all these other big things on our list, because we're placing that focus on something that's external.
mhm,
And although a business in itself is external, other people may perceive that as its own entity. Some people do have business blueprints that are their own entity. Others have business blueprints that are deeply infused between their soul mission and where they're at. And to explain that a little deeper, I have all of my clair senses activated. So, tangibility with finances for some people might look like a giant ocean and the waves are crashing and they're just happy, frolicking like a little siren out there singing her song and
mhm,
calling all of her clients in. Whereas other people, water, when it comes to finance, might be a bad sign. And when they hear that from me as their psychic strategist, they're going to say, oh, okay, so if I'm drowning, it's because of all the responsibility. So again, anything that I interpret is being translated for that certain client to understand it from their energetic perspective.
mhm,
So there are not a lot of people that might be able to do that. They might be reading, for example, something a little bit more vast and restrictive like tarot, which is saying the fool means this and
mhm,
this card means that
mhm,
and tower is that. And they will go through these interpretations based on the tool's interpretation, not based on the soul's interpretation for how that client has to actually hear it for it to land. Does
mhm.
that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so I'll make a collective reminder again. Tools like tarot, oracle, human design, constellations, that's perfect because it is a modality,
Mhm,
but it is something to access certain parts and aspects of the tool, but it needs to also be viewed and understood that it is an interpretation of that person's perspective who channeled that modality.
mhm,
And to back it up, because we're talking to a lot of healers, I'm sure, a lot of entrepreneurs that are doing soul mission work, especially based on your vibes of your podcast. So thank you for having me on it, because it's so important to know that most people have their own modality. They have their own special way of tapping into source energy and bringing that through their own expression through a business blueprint. And it's not about trademarking. This new paradigm business is not about certification. It's not about refinement to a niche pulling in the certificates and saying, well, this is my menu because I know all of these things from other people.
Mm,
It's this is my gift, this is my expression, this is the transformation I can offer. Would you like to buy that?
mhm.
And it's all encompassing. And this is the era that we're moving into, where people are fully expressed in all areas and they have access to all information. It's like an access all areas pass, the VIP, like all people are very important people. Regardless of what tools they use, what level of spirituality they're on. I say level with those
Yeah.
quotation marks for those who are listening and not watching, because it's not better or worse than, it's not good or bad. The neutrality has fully come online in the space of the business paradigm.
Yeah. That's really so. So let me ask you what you see, because it seems to me like COVID came, everybody went online, and there was this suddenly, like, now even when I think about it, like coaches charging so much money. Like, to me, a lot of money. I'm a preschool. I was a preschool teacher, so I come from very humble background, you know. And so um it seemed to me there was just this huge inflation of prices of just, which, no judgment. I think, like, okay, whatever. It's all just a play in a game, and different, whatever things happen for whatever reason that they happen. So there was this huge bubble, I feel like, in the coaching industry where it was just like, wow, people are just making all this money and charging lots and lots and lots of money. And then it seems like, I think it was really last year, and maybe the year of the snake had some significance to it, but it just seemed like a lot of people felt this, like, oh, things have really slowed down. Like, I noticed even some coaches that were, normally charge a lot of money for their one-on-one services were like discounting it, greatly. Um, I'm curious if you're seeing, when you say a level playing field, do you see that also in terms of what what people are charging and asking for their services? Because there has to be, the way I understand the way the market works, right? It's like, if it's a rarity and it's in demand, then the value of it goes up. But then when you have this, social media space where it's like everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people, or at least in my algorithm, a lot of people are, online coaches, entrepreneurs, healers. Um, so I'm curious what you see happening in terms of that from a larger perspective.
It's so fun because, just to repeat, most of my work was face to face. And then we get to the end of COVID and I came online and I was like, what is this? What is going on here? And and I love that you said that it's a bubble, but at the time, and if we rewind even 5 years, because timelines are simultaneous, okay, so we're talking past, present, future. If we embody the energies and the beliefs that time doesn't exist, especially as a psychic, we're actually able to rewind and fast forward. So when I rewound on what is this to understand it more, it's actually used to be presented more like a triangle.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it was this hierarchy. It was about the pyramid. It was about the coaches who coach a coach, and then they coach the coach to coach other coaches. And all of them are using the same or very similar frameworks and repackaging it with another name.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would trademark, and then the people that knew how to do marketing really well were able to create certifications. So we're kind of rewinding on our conversation today, but I want to expand on that. What does that mean when I say loosely that people don't really need trademarks as much as they used to? It's mostly just because the buying and selling of these style of assets is not as affluent or productive from a soul blueprint, from a collective soul blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be something, and I'll try and pull this into a bit more of a tangible example so it makes sense. Let's look at someone that creates a framework, it's 7 parts, and they want to sell it to corporate.
Hmm.
Tangible, high ticket, sustainable, subscription based. They can generate 100 to 200, maybe $1 million per revenue. This is still a consistent thing that can happen.
Hmm.
We actually, in fact, need the healers to come online with more corporate offers so that people who are not yet activated in more spiritual awareness and inner intuitive awareness, and they're not maybe on a similar wavelength, they need access to that. And these are people that are still working 9 to 5s, and there's more to say about that as well. But again, not in a judgment. It's not better or worse than that is their soul experience. But if it is my responsibility and soul experience and part of my mission to help business owners, to help communities, to help their families, to help the entire world,
Hmm.
to help the next generation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's now becoming, and where we're moving to is the bubble. It is a big sphere, and it's not just a stagnant sphere. That's the last 12 months. That's why there was a lot of stagnation. There
Hmm.
wasn't a lot of alignment for a lot of people. There was a lot of reevaluating and reassessing and really having to come back down into the core of, wow, I'm not getting what I set out to do. I'm not getting. I'm not getting the
Hmm.
clients. I'm not getting the money. I'm not getting the views. And when we're in that get energy, it does switch the gears on the receiving because we're not in the give mode. And we
Hmm.
went into panic as a collective. We went into the fear of, oh, well, now COVID's over and the triangle is collapsing and there's no more pyramid scheme. And how am I supposed to? And I say pyramid scheme loosely. Again, I'm just referring to how the hierarchy was placed. I don't say that legally what was happening within the coaching industry was a pyramid scheme, because it's not technically. If you
Right.
go and Google the definition of that, and people want to use that terminology in the business world, that's not accurate. But just for the sake of that visualization, yes, it was that triangle where if you are in with those certain people, and it became very clicky, and
Yeah.
then there was drama, and then there was learning. Again, it's all just soul expression, it's all
Right.
soul experience. And there's nothing wrong with the way that it played out. But what is right about it is that so many people came to new awarenesses about who they are and how they operate in the world.
Hmm.
And that was the most fun part of all of this journey. And moving on to the like more solution vibe, which is where I love to stay. Imagine that that stagnant sphere transformed from the triangle and it evolved out to this massive circle like a globe. It's starting to spin again.
Mm.
It's starting to
It's
move
true.
again, and everything, it's getting all jumbled up and scrambled up inside of it, and people are bumping into people that they never assumed had any information that they would even need or pay for or could afford. And that's where it's being not only deconstructed, but it's transforming into a different type of energetic exchange now. And understanding that money is a tool. Money has no value.
Mhm.
It's not valued in the same way that it was 5 years ago,
Mhm.
because a lot of people were peddling money is energy. If you just get into alignment, you can have more of it. And there's parts of it that's true, but in the duality of things, that's not all true. I could do an entire podcast episode about money is not energy, by the way. So I'll probably have to park that topic because otherwise I'm going to keep on going.
We'll have to do we'll have to have you on again to just dive into that
Yeah.
because I'd love to hear it. Yeah. Okay. So,
So we're all bumping heads, we're all bumping into each other. Basically, the
yeah,
triangle became a sphere that was not moving for about 18 months. Now it's moving again, so have fun
true.
networking.
It's true. I feel
Yeah.
that and I see evidence of that. It's so fascinating to me how this all works. And I would say too that I think what I find really interesting is there's all this disclosure, right? Disclosure, right? Epstein files. Now they're talking about alien disclosure. It seems to me that moving forward, walking in integrity is if you want to if you want to stay standing on your own 2 feet, you've got to walk in integrity because everything it will be revealed and disclosed. So if you're not walking in the truth and in integrity, it's going to bite you in the butt. It's going to come back to bite you. That's what I notice and see. It's like, yeah, because of the internet and because of the playing field being leveled out, it's like, yeah, you're just because you've made it someplace, if it was ever accomplished through a lack of integrity, and maybe that person thought they could get away with it, and again, I don't say that as judgment. It's like, part of being human is that we are tempted, we are maybe seduced by different things. And so it's not to say that, I guess I just want to say that I just remember my teacher from many years ago who, anyway, she was a complicated person, but she did say that in the New Earth paradigm, that anything that is not in alignment with Earth herself would not make it through this portal, this birthing period that we're going through in terms of becoming the next level of expression. And so I'm curious if that's something that you see as well.
I think being a human that can read simultaneous timelines, my perspective may be slightly different and also the same because all roads lead to unity.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm.
until the human can really get on board from an individual, a community, a family, and a collective expression with understanding that we are all one, we're moving like an actual hive. The hive mind is moving.
Mm.
And if you're not shifting with it, you will stay in the parts of the hive without the honey. You
Mm.
will stay in the parts of the hive where people are working harder than others. You will stay in the parts of the hive where you're not as close to the queen or the result or the success or the path, the highest potential path for you, because you're not with the collective in all of its disarray, in all of the chaos,
Mm.
and not being in opposition to things all of the time. The more we resist these recalibrations and the disgusting things that we're all experiencing right now, which children like me have known about since we were children because of the type of family that we grew up in. And
Mm.
I'm talking about the frequency distortions in mainstream music, back mastering when they put satanic messages in, not watching TV. And maybe, yes, part of it was a bit of religious programming because there was the secular music and all of the not allowed to watch the music film clips because
Mm.
it was too sexualized. My parents instilled a lot of beliefs and ideas and programs within me, and it's the same within this business paradigm, because I want to like track it back to this topic that we've been on today. Especially, it's going to take some time,
Mm.
human time, to reprogram before we can see the repatterning.
Yeah.
And if you understand psychology and how that works, you can repattern and repattern, and you'll see these cycles that will just keep on going. And it's a bit like when something really bad happened to you and you just keep thinking about it in exactly the same way over and over. And then you say, well, why hasn't anything changed yet?
Right.
And it's like, well, have you actually taken the file out and observed it from a perspective that's a little bit more neutral, including everything that you hated about it, everything that you thought that you knew about it, everything that you believed to be true about it, everything that was your perspective about that particular situation? And note, this can be applied to absolutely everything, including your religious perspectives, your views on people that are in same sex marriages. We're talking about children or no children. We're talking
Mhm.
about money. And we're talking about everything. Basically, anything that you think is opposing your safety. anything that you are in resistance to within this earth right now can be viewed from a much more neutral perspective. And that is the most foundational thing, in my belief, that will move this collective forward to understanding that we are all connected, whether you like it or not, whether you're happy about it or not. The
Yeah.
emotions are just a part of the human experience. And in the neutrality of just seeing it and witnessing it, and being in, I could cry, like being in awe and
Yeah.
in fascination of how this is playing out right now. And yes, there are souls that have come here and they're being brutally harmed. Yes. And they are also living simultaneous realities in other frequencies, in other dimensions where that pain is not a part of their current program in that other reality.
Mhm.
Even this right now just became a deja vu, and I was like, what? I had a dream about this about 8 weeks ago, that exact like thing that just came through. Well,
Yeah.
ugh.
Well, what's coming through to me right now, and this is kind of just a little segue, which is why I find it so interesting that things like ibogaine and ketamine and ayahuasca, and that that are here in service, it seems to, if used correctly, of course. I mean, I always say that because it can also be a false path if you're just on that loop of not um, applying your own will to your own transformation. But when you were saying, like, to be able to see something from a different perspective, from a place of neutrality, it collapses that negative charge, that resistance that you're talking about, and then you're free. You're more free to be your authentic self, right? And we coming back to that. It's like coming back to authenticity. It's like that seems to be what is the message really when it comes to business and service. It's like authentic. Are you authentic in your service? Are you really genuinely moved to be of service, to help people? Because truthfully, um, to me, that really is the source of happiness, is when we are in genuine service to another. When we're chasing the money, and then we wonder why we're depressed when we have the millions and we want to kill ourselves. It's like, well, yeah, because you've been chasing this thing that's empty, like you said, that it actually has no value in and of itself, right? It's really about the human connection. It's about the wholeness. It's about the unity. Everything that you're saying that you're so moved by, it's like that's what we all deep, deep, deep down, what we want. And it's like we've got to clear the distortions that are keeping us from having that experience. And so then when we can um, be our authentic selves and genuinely uplift one another, it's like, yeah, we're all walking ourselves home, like you said. So I love this
And
conversation.
being it's so good. I was like, we could talk for like 3 hours. And I think the final kind of thing that I'd love to say, if I was to wrap anything up for you, because I'm
Yeah,
like, let's put a pretty bow on this, Danya. Like, it's been
yeah,
so amazing. But I'm feeling into the like two parts. Is any path actually false? And just have a look at your beliefs, because even people who harm other people believe that that is true for them. And if that is their soul expression, like as disgusting as that might be in our perception and our values or morals and our program, they've been programmed in a different way. And I just want to make it very clear, I don't mean that it needs to be neutrality in full acceptance of the effed up stuff that's happening
well,
on the planet.
right,
Like,
no,
there still can be the right and the wrong, and there can be some very extreme, almost nihilism expressions that can come out when I might say something like that, and people go, oh, so does that mean that she doesn't care about the war, or she doesn't think that it's wrong that children have been harmed? I still have my own moral compass, and I still live my life based on those values, and I indoctrinate my own children based on those values, like homeschooling,
mhm,
anti-injection. Like,
mhm,
there's a lot of things that I'm so open about, and when other people hear my story and they align with my values, then they're on a similar wavelength, and then they're on a similar path. Like, people that live inside of a correctional facility are on the same path as the collective that they have used their free will to choose to be a participant of. for that soul expression on this timeline.
Mhm.
And so when I say neutrality and come to the agreeingness that we are one, it doesn't mean that you have to agree with the behavior or the decisions or the actions that they took. But it does just have some adult, mature, emotionally mature, and mentally mature, and spiritually mature awareness that it is still all connected, and that there is such a thing as duality, and we do get to use our free will to choose that path and that expression, and that even people that we perceive maybe on a false path or the wrong path or a cycle or these loops that we can see playing out for them, that's up to them.
Yeah.
And the other part of it, there was one other thing I wanted to say. I wonder if it slipped my mind now. It might not be all that's needed, and really, yeah, I love that you've come back to the through line of authenticity, because that's one of my main pillars, and I love that what I've expressed today actually showcased that that was a through line. So
Mhm.
thank you for seeing me, and I really hope that people can take away from this podcast that there's not really wrong choices, but there can be shortcuts and fast tracks to these higher timelines. And if you are a specialist in your area, in your facilitation, and you've spent decades refining this, you are here to serve. And sometimes it does require a higher price point because of the energetics that you are pouring into those areas. It's okay. And it's also okay if you're someone that's not comfortable doing that, because accessibility is a value of yours. Because there's no wrong way about doing it. It's just, and this is the part of, thank you. I'm so glad that I came back to this, because I really wanted to pour into this podcast. There are certain people that are here to lead other leaders. And I know
Mhm.
for a certainty within my being
Yeah.
that when I serve someone that has thousands of people that they're impacting, that's my impact. It doesn't mean that I have to still be trying to serve the masses and have $100 offer so that everybody can get onto a call with me. It means that when I speak like Tanya and I speak to leaders, and leadership is not to be interpreted as a hierarchy. That's completely dismantled, but leading can actually look like helping the people that have so many people that are like under them, using quotation marks again,
Yeah.
because I'm just trying to make it seem a certain way to the human brain so that you understand it's not because someone's better than you. It just might mean that someone like me has literally spent her entire life refining everything that I do and being completely obsessed with what I do and who I am and how I operate, so that I can help other people learn and know and understand themselves, so they can generate more wealth, because then they can open their charities, they can help their families more. Their kids will never have to live in poverty like they did, like I did. I don't ever want that for my own children. And the more you speak about these very loud values and the reasons why you are doing what you are doing, that's when the people will be finding you, and they will say, ah, that's a person that I'd like to invest in, because they're doing it for like this reason that aligns with my reason. And we create those soul contracts that way.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. You said that really well. And it is this beautiful, it is a beautiful energy exchange when there, I do love the word investment because um I guess it's just like, again, going back to letting the audience know, whoever needs to hear this, it's like really trusting your gut, as far as what your journey is, because there has been a lot of, you were talking about NLP, like sort of fear mongering, like, oh, well, if again, when you're feeling fear, and you mentioned it before, is that fear really just a gut instinct saying you're not ready for this big investment? It's not where you're at right now. Like you need more time to be able to hold that, or or is it just, afraid of moving a little bit beyond your comfort zones, because that is required in growth. Like you do have to make certain jumps and leaps. And it seems to me, Danikah, that you're the type of person that, or the what you're really good at is helping those who are leading, who are who have a big vision, who need that extra support in like, how do I make this into reality? What is it? What's missing? What do I need to do to anchor this vision down? That's my sense, is that you really love working with the visionaries and the people who are here to do the good work and yeah, bring in the new earth, you know? So anyway, thank you so much. And I wanted to ask you, how can people work with you? What are some of your offers that you have on the table right now?
Okay, that's such an amazing question at the perfect time because I was doing a lot of group work and I had my membership, and all of these things also for me have dismantled. And I took a maternity leave and I was kind of in this like coasting, nurturing growth mode again. And I went back to that like phase one in business, although, of course, experienced, advanced, and whatever else you want to label it as. And I was like, my body wants to relax. I want to have this fifth baby with this postpartum, and he guided me so much on this journey to be really just like chill. And
Mm,
now I'm getting up into this. Okay, I really have refined and I understand even more so now that I'm here to serve leaders one on one, and that is where the most potent magic is. And I also will have my mastermind that's launching again, and typically I only allow in 4 to 6 women because then they actually do get the customized support that we were talking about before. It's really important that we're not just being like, oh, I'm going to get 15 women because they can get some wins and I can
mhm,
scale. It's not about me. It's about like, will their business actually evolve through my framework? And
mhm,
the Evolve Mastermind, funnily enough, it's called Evolve, and that's what it will be for. And it's blending the strategy and the soul through parts of that journey to get them to the 20K month, so that is something that is consistent for them and they're not hovering,
mhm.
wondering, why am I not at that level? Why have I not got back to my $1 million? Why? And it's like, we don't have to always be focusing on the money, because I actually had it. I'll quickly say this because it's very interesting. One of my clients was like, oh, if I do this event, then yada yada yada, it's going to be $60,000. And I was like, okay, rewind. It's not going to be $60,000. It's going to be 120 women that have their lives absolutely transformed by the work that you do. That's the impact, not the $60,000. And as soon as you can shift into that frequency of like, how far is this actually reaching? That's when you'll be able to reach those golden nuggets that are really coming in for you. And I can do that through my one-on-one strategy work. So I do auditing and I have some done for you stuff. But yeah, predominantly it's focused around giving you the insights, and then you can take that information from a good strategy and then implement it.
Yeah, beautiful. Amazing. So DanikahRoseCreative.com. Go check
Thank
her out.
you.
See her on Facebook, and
Thank you so much for
would love to
having
have you.
me.
I'd love to have you again sometime when the time feels right. So thank you so much, and everyone, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, listening, and yeah, much love to all of you. Thank you, Danikah.
Excited to catch up again. Thanks.
All right, bye.